I started playing, I guess, officially at 7, where you get your racket and you start playing. I was always around the squash courts and Dad was playing a lot, and so I definitely feel as though I get my work ethic from him, and he was in the army, so it was that as a kid growing up in that very organised, almost military style household to a degree. Played every sport at school, and because of the hand-eye coordination I was quite good at hockey and rounders, so I was doing that well, and squash obviously gives you a good fitness base. I like squash because I rely completely on myself for it. I could never understand how someone would come on and not want to have the same work ethic or give 100% every single day, or just have a bad day and not really care. I guess it sort of made me realise that I didn't want to play a team sport. Dad would work away 3 or 4 days a week sometimes and come home on a Friday, pick me up, and we'd go straight to a tournament, and we'd have to fit in his work around the tournament. He works in pubs, so there was a lot of time in pub car parks, pubs in the morning after the night before, that smell and the sticky floors, it's still in my head even to this day. And so there was always that pressure of, I knew how much time and effort that they were putting into that. Sometimes we'd leave the work and we'd be miles away from the squash club, and it'd be like, yeah, we're going to be late, you better start stretching. And I'm like, I'm in the passenger seat, what am I going to do? Like, get a leg up on the dash? And that would be my preparation for my match, and I'd get in there. And he was pretty tough as well. He would, he'd always say it doesn't matter if you win or lose as long as you play well, but if I lost, it was brutal. But generally, if I lost, I'd played badly because I'm one in England. So it was sort of maybe he was right. It doesn't matter if you play well, and maybe every time I lost, I didn't play well, and that was the thing. So, and then I went to college probably and got a scholarship for my squash, which was something like £1,000 a year. It was probably from college I started really thinking I could give this a go, which seems quite late because I'm 17, 18 by this point, and I've represented England and I'm aware that there's a pro tour, but I still had plans to go to uni, and it was only really when I thought, let's just give it a bit of a go, and deferred my uni place. So it was 18 when I thought squash was for me properly, there's no other option. Around that finishing college time, unfortunately, my parents separated at that point, so it was tough. Like family home obviously broke up, and although I was maybe 18 at that point, Mum sort of eventually moved out of the family home and sort of left me and my brother with my dad in the family home, which was fine-ish. Ended up having a big fallout with my dad, and I left, and at this point was with Danny, who's now my husband, and sort of went to his house basically. And so it was just dealing with all that at the time. I remember going to the European under-19, so I was probably not far off 19, and I just remember my head being in a complete tiz and didn't perform well. Got to the final but lost in the final. Yeah, at 18 I guess, out of home, and so that was a whole new, getting mature very quickly, learning things that you'd never done before, obviously not living with parents anymore and dealing with all that.
When Laura was young, she used to come to the squads, but I wasn't her individual coach. And she used to come along and she was always quite surly. Movement was a massive problem. You're just thinking there would be no dream of Laura Massaro being a world #1. You thought the movement would have been so much of a problem that might have really held her back. I mean, Paul Carter and myself, I remember one instance when we were doing some ghosting on the national squad. She was ghosting away, and I said to Laura, is that as fast as you can go? She looked at me with that sort of, that look. And I said, well, you're only just started. And I said, come on, we need to go faster. And she said, she just went, that's as fast as I can go. And I remember Paul Carter and I just bursting into laughter. And I maybe, again, it's not politically correct, but I said something like, well, you're moving like an elephant, I think you should get. And she just looked, and it's just funny, she always remembers that. But the one thing she had, again, was this determination.
Left college, got a job at David Lloyd, which is where I was training, working a couple of shifts a week. It just gave me enough money with a little bit of funding I was getting from England Squash to basically pay my way and funding myself to start trying to go to a few senior tournaments. So It all happened really quickly after college, and there was a lot of mess going on and a lot of things to sort through, and I guess that was the biggest period of growing up really quickly. I think I learned so much about myself in that period, and I wouldn't change working at David Lloyd. It made me realise how much I wanted to be a squash player, how much I needed to put in, and I didn't want to be working down there. I wanted to be travelling and getting my ranking up and doing as well as I could. So coming from being pretty much #1 in England from 14, coming onto the tour, and things I'd say went pretty well pretty quickly. Within the first year was up to maybe inside the top 50, which was not bad, and sort of steadily made progression. And I remember knowing that I was #1 in England out the juniors, but then Alison then jumped above me and just pushed on really quickly, and that made me push on even more. Jenny was a year older than both of us, so she was always a little bit ahead. So then all of a sudden I'm sort of way down on these two who have come through juniors together, and they were always in the top 10, and it was a massive motivator for me to try and catch them up, basically. And it stung a lot of the time because they were starting to get into England teams. They went away for the World Team Championships in Edmonton with Tanya Bailey and Vicky Botwright, and they went and won the World Teams out there, and that was an unbelievable week to go away and do that, and I was left out the team.
I remember being at the British Closed, I think it was, and Danny, Laura's husband, he came up to me after when Laura had played, and he said to me, DP, he says, Laura would really like to have some coaching with you, when I was national coach. And she said she always feels as though she's sort of third in line. So it's a bit like Jenny Duncalf or Alison Waters were getting all the attention because they were, at that time, the better players. And she always feels that you sort of ignore her a little bit. And I remember saying to him, I said, I'll tell you what then, from now on I won't ignore her. I said, in the situation it is now, I'll try and, make her feel more comfortable.
Do you feel you played well, Laura?
I can improve on my football.
What about you, Alison? Did you?
Bloody hell.
Through my early to mid-20s, it was a bit of a grind at times. With there was a lot of tournaments in Malaysia at that time, a lot of big flights, whether it was to the States or Malaysia or Australia even a couple of times. I was in the main draw of these events, so maybe I'm sort of getting myself to top 10 in the world, well, top 12 should we say, and you're drawing someone top 8 in the first round, so you're flying all the way to a tournament for potentially one match. And I think that that's a really awkward sort of time for someone at that ranking. It's hard to break through into the real next bracket of seeding. I guess the breakthrough just came when I started playing those tournaments, turning up and actually getting the occasional win. It was quite a while before I sort of made a final or won even a gold event at that time, but I did slowly start to chip away, get the odd win. For me, it was really important to keep that winning mentality going, that it wasn't just all about chasing points, chasing money, chasing a ranking, so to speak. It was about trying to, keep the odd smaller event in there, try and win occasional titles if you can. I guess at the time it never really felt it because you're always trying to improve and you're always trying to learn, but when I look back there was a period where I wasn't really doing a lot. I might have got to the first round, quarter-final, but the breakthrough moment I think was when I beat Nicole for the first time. And then from there it was not only a belief that I could then win a big tournament, but that I could beat Nicole again. And I didn't beat her every single time that I played, but I got stuck in most times we played, and I guess it's where I started to feel like I built who I was as a player, and like I sort of call it my brand a little bit, how I step onto the court.